But when you're talking about this cognac glass that we're doing right here, we're talking about so much detail it has. It's got so much reflection on it. It's so minute that that's part of what's going to make this tattoo so nice, is picking away at all this stuff until it gets done correctly. The key to doing a good portrait, one of the main keys, is patience. All this stuff takes a while. You got to pick away at it. A lot of people are better than they are. They just don't know it because they haven't mastered patience yet. So if you could master patience, then you're naturally going to get better just from doing that. I think it's in everybody to just want to get it done, whatever your job is, whether you're an artist or working at a coffee house or anything. You just want to just do things and get it done quickly. But tattooing is one of those things where there's no other option. If you want it to be done the right way, you have to take all the steps to get there. And all those steps add up to more time, and you just have to do it. Otherwise you sacrifice quality. And we don't want that. Realistically, we could make this bottom part of the glass take only 5 minutes, but we're going to probably spend 7 to 8, maybe even 10, just nailing it away. And then when we put the white in, it's going to just come to life. I can't wait for the white. That's my favorite part. It just kind of brings the whole tattoo to life in a really cool way. Even on something like this, I'm doing a portrait once again. I'm doing a portrait of the bottom of a glass. So I want this bottom of the glass to look exactly like the reference. Constantly looking away. Even the shadows on his fingernail can't go unnoticed. All the portraits I've ever seen, or anytime anyone's ever stopped me to ask me about their portraits or anything like that, or ones that I've noticed in magazines, I look at the overall portrait, and then I look at how it was achieved and accomplished, and a lot of times you could tell the person was great at shading, but they just didn't give it all they had. One of my biggest opinions is everybody's better than they think they are. Just like everything, it takes a while to do it right. It takes a while to get it done. And this part actually is fun. It's just fun working the area, making sure that it's perfect. It's like a challenge. It's a challenge to me to make this better than my last portrait. I'll point something out just to kind of know how serious that I am about the detail part of this portrait. Even something as detailed as that being all black, and there being like a minute piece of the skin showing. As it comes up to the shadow, it then starts to turn gray. Just that little minute little spot right there. You take that approach to the whole entire portrait, you're going to have Very, very, very nice portrait. Very nice final product. After you're done, you're going to really be amazed. Just stick to these theories and stick to these, I call them tricks, because that's all a portrait is. It's just a bunch of tricks and theories and techniques combined into one that you've learned and you've mastered. Most importantly, I'll say it again, is patience. If you have someone else coming in, you're late on one of your appointments. Perfect example. Today, I have another appointment later on, and I don't care. I'm going to just pretend like I don't. If I have to reschedule, if I have to postpone, no matter what, a portrait is that important. You know, you can't really just stop it and come back to it. It's always better just to get it done in the same session. That way you don't lose your values, you don't lose anything. It's all fresh, you're in the mode. I wouldn't want to stop this and come back to it a week later. It wouldn't have the same energy, I think, you know. So no matter what, it's just really important to schedule enough time to finish a portrait. Give yourself at least an hour of buffering. All these things make a difference. Everything I'm mentioning, it sounds like a small deal, and in it by itself, it is a small deal. But, you know, you have $101 bills, you have $100 now. Everything adds up. Everything adds up in the final product. As long as you keep to all these theories and own them, you'll amaze yourself. A lot of people don't think of shading with a smaller needle like this, whether it be a single needle or whether it be a 1205, which is what I'm using. And to be honest, it's definitely very tricky to shade with this. I mean, like I said, if you haven't tried this technique out, maybe I wouldn't rush into doing it on a portrait for the first time. Maybe you can try, using it on a skull or something like that, a Sacred Heart, just your regular tattoos type of thing, different than a portrait. And keep in mind, part of the reason why it's hard to shade with an outliner needle is you don't want to overwork the skin, and it's so easy to overwork the skin, so easy. When I first started tattooing for the first 3 to 4 years, I did everything with a single needle. So I think that's kind of where I had that embedded into my head. If I did a big dragon or letters, I was kind of forced to do it with a single needle because I didn't really know what else was out there at the time. Now I sure wish I did. It would have saved me lots of time and energy. I like to repeat myself for one reason. I just know that, something as detailed as a portrait, you can't just tell somebody something one time. So if I sound like I'm repeating myself, anything I say twice or 3 times, just look at it like it's important to know. And what I'm about to say and repeat is the fact that everything else that I'm doing is I'm zoning out on. I'm right now doing a portrait of a cognac glass. That's all I see, that's all I'm focused on. To me, I'm going to pretend like that's all I have to do today, is a portrait of a cognac glass. I'm going to on purpose finish this whole entire glass with this needle, just so you guys can see the importance of picking away at the detail to really master it. A lot of cross-hatching on stuff like this is always helpful. This entire glass, I'm doing like a 50% to kind of build it up, 50% ink, kind of gradient to fix it up to where it's going to be so simple just to add a darker tone than a lighter tone doing the whites. But right now, just kind of doing it right in the middle, 50, and then slowly darkening it up. Just makes it a lot easier. Sometimes people like to rush into the thing, and any kind of tattoo they do, they rush into it and just kind of finish it going back and forth. When to me it gets confusing. It's better just to kind of lay out your overall with a certain tone, you know, mainly a lighter tone or a 50% tone, you know, and then start darkening areas up like this or like that, or these areas or these areas. But I like to lay this tone down overall for the first part of any type of portrait piece. Even little reflections, something's really close. Whenever you're doing glass or a cup or anything like that, definitely want to pay attention to how the reflection in the glass plays along with the surrounding areas, like the finger. It just kind of helps you in the confusing state of mind that any portrait will put you in. You know, you just want to make it easier on yourself. So just constantly be aware of what's reflecting and how it plays a part in the glass or the texture. Now I'm going to go back with the 70% ink and kind of just lay it into my 50% ink just to kind of make it more of a 3D object now versus 2D. Like I was talking about earlier, just laying out your overall 50% tones, 40% tones, then you go into it and darken it up, makes it come back more to life. And it's easy to follow this technique, less confusion. So I'm thinking I'm done with the glass. Just gonna kind of like stop and pause for a second and just kind of check myself here. I like to say that word, check yourself, because it's part of what tattooing is all about. Especially a portrait, you got to constantly make sure that you're doing the best job you can, that you're following the orders. I look at it like this portrait is like a dictator. It's telling you what to do, telling you how to do it. and you have to listen to him and listen carefully and follow his instructions, you know. So when you do that, you see little things like I see here, like I got to darken this up a little bit to make it exact. Let's see what else pops out. Maybe a little bit darker over here. A little darker over here. There's some texture in the glass, kind of like miscellaneous reflections. Now it's really starting to come to life. When I put the white in here, it's really going to look nice. Okay. As far as my outliner machine goes and how I switched and the reason why I switched, I think I'm ready to go back to my shader now. Okay, I switched back to the shader machine. Now that I've kind of got all my roadmaps laid out for my tight detail, which is why we switched to the other machine and the other needle. So now I got my shader back. I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of follow-up, cleanup, you know, just making sure I got these overall tones. And this is stuff right now that you really wouldn't want to do with the outliner. And yeah, once again, just, you know, tightening up the fingers and getting that nice overall tone, the overall skin tone and shade. That's the fun thing about switching back and forth. It just kind of gives you a break into the next machine and just kind of gives you more of a chance to nail it down. Nailing it down is the key. Areas like this, where the finger is kind of got a lot of wrinkles and things on it, and there's just a lot of texture, it's good to revert back to the darker stencil that we made earlier. It gives you more of a roadmap to go off of for the darker shades and more the texture. Now something like this, when I'm back in my groove with the shader machine and I'm utilizing that technique where I got the single needle out, it's definitely a perfect example of the right time when to utilize that single needle 3 tight technique with your shader. You know, kind of, for example, we're going into just that finger and right there and a little bit right there, maybe a little more, maybe even a little more. Okay, one more important technique to think about is when you squint your eyes, sometimes you got to go back and forth and squint your eyes, and you'll see that this white collar and how it looks on the reference, you got to keep it that way. A lot of times when people do white, they have a tendency to over scrub it and it turns gray, and it's not really gray. Sometimes you have to let the skin breathe. You have to I call it letting the artwork breathe. And in this case, there's just a little bit of shading on the bottom part of the sleeve. Then I'm going to really wash. This is really watered down. This is about a 10% ink right here. I'll just kind of transition that shade into the rest of the sleeve, and then I'll stop, you know, and it's done. You know, I don't want to overkill it. It's really, that's how it looks actually, you know, a little bit right there. That's how it looks in the picture, and it makes for good contrast. Now we're moving on to this skull base thingamajigger. I don't know what it is, but it's a skull base, and we're just going to go ahead and do what we see. That's another great part of doing portraits. You don't have to know what it is. You just do what you see. We're going with about a 90% ink right now. We're just kind of building it up. Building up this bottom shadow. This shadow kind of, it's really important to see and notice how shadows meet other shadows. This base is a shadow, and how it meets the shadow of his jacket. You want to be mindful of how it does so and make sure that it's exactly how it is. Part of that is just, once again, relating your tones, comparing. Now we're getting some detail. This you know, like we said, I don't know what I'm doing right now as far as this actual marking that's on the base, but I'm just doing exactly what I see. And it's kind of a practice, or it's kind of a refresher to let you know that you're not in control creatively of this portrait, or any portrait. Your job is to do what you see, and that's it. There's a famous technique where you hold your painting upside down, and you do the portrait upside down. And what that does is it kind of tells your mind that you know, you're only going to paint what you see. So when you turn it upside down, it forces your brain to kind of make it not really a portrait at that point. It's just about painting shapes, because ultimately that's all this is a bunch of shapes and shades. And sometimes your mind can actually mess it up by trying to dictate to you how it should look, or what it could have to make it better. But we don't want that. Not when we're doing portraits. There's really not much to this base other than the fact that it's an object, and it's, you know, falls in line with a portrait. You know, there's not much really to talk about on this base other than just pay attention to the reference and just do what you see, as well as these reflections probably are the one thing that we can talk about. The reflections on this kind of represent the texture. You could almost tell that this is sort of either a shiny wood or a shiny, actually I'm going to go with wood. This to me seems like it's a shiny wood base from the reflection and how it looks. So kind of important to pick up on that type of thing. It makes it easier to approach. One thing to always remember, and everybody should already know this, but if not, it's always good just to say it. You know, when you're referencing to do a portrait, and you're doing a portrait from reference, you want to make sure that if it did come from a colored source, if someone hands you a colored picture of your tattoo that you're going to do, you just want to double check and make sure you've changed it to black and gray for the reference. So once again, if you're doing a black and gray portrait and you have a colored reference, go to Kinko's, make sure you do a black and gray copy of it on photo mode. That way you're getting your exact tones that the color portrait doesn't have.